This is The High Road with author and registered psychotherapist, Dr. Marlene Bizub. Dr. Marlene speaks to the heart of people who need to be lifted up and get out of the muck and mire that often accompanies major life changes, such as divorce or separation. Dr. Marlene will aspire to help parents of divorce to love their children more than they hate their ex, and to learn to take the high road. So please welcome the host of The High Road, Dr. Marlene.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. I'll tell you, it is morning in our time zone, and it's 10 o'clock. It could be worse, but it's 10 o'clock here, and I'm not quite awake yet. I have to tell you, George, I think I have a Halloween hangover from all the candy or something.
Well, good morning in our time zone, Dr. Marlene. It's great to be with you again.
Yes, great to have you. And as always, I tried to jump right in, so I will do the same today. We talked recently about kids growing up and kind of a message to parents that your children will grow up and they will look back if you were not supportive of the relationship between your children and the other parent. They'll look back and they'll see in adult terms what you did, and they will say, "How dare you?" And we talked about that a couple weeks ago. And in you and I talking, George, we decided that I would share some stories, and hopefully you as well. And I know you don't work with children like I do, but just some stories, real life examples of what happens when kids come back as adults and look at what you did. And again, now it's from an adult perspective. When they're children, they're influenceable or malleable or however you want to put that. But it's easy to manipulate them. But when they get to be adults and they look back and they see that that's exactly what you did, they are going to resent you and they are going to say, "Why? And how dare you?" And I'll stop there and let you jump in here and say a few words.
Well, I have the opportunity to see an adult child who is a child of divorce, and his parents did not fight over them. And he has a good relationship with both parents. And I think the reason for that, or part of the reason for that anyway, is the lack of contention between the parents during and after their divorce.
Yes, right. And that is the greatest gift that we can give our children while we're going through divorce is permission to love both parents. Not just permission, because parents say, "Well, I don't need to give them permission. They know they can love that parent." Well, then show your support of the relationship. Speak positively of the other parent. Don't roll your eyes at the mention of the other parent. Things like that. I mean, well, parents don't realize how subtle their reactions and responses might be, but kids pick up on them. And when you go, they know you're frustrated with that other parent, and they don't need to feel that stress because they internalize that and they feel that stress. And oh no, mom's upset with dad, and I want both parents and I love both parents. So I've got to fix it. They'll start trying to fix problems and they become parentified, is really what they do. They start parenting their parents and become parentified because they're trying to make sure the relationship stays civil and calm. And, I know you've seen that too, at least from the perspective of the person representing one of the parents.
Yes, and I hear that from, or I heard that from parents that the other parent is trying to make the child the emotional caretaker of the parent. And
Yes.
if that's accurate, that's just not fair to the child.
No, it's not. No. And I'm glad you brought that up. That's very insightful of you. But of course, you do this kind of work. Um, but parents don't realize that children will often feel responsible for their happiness. And children should never feel that way. They should never be and aren't responsible for your happiness and your peaceful, you know, frame of mind and attitude and demeanor and all of that, because it's those things. I have parents who say, I never said a negative word about the other parent. And I'll ask the children, is that true? Did mom never say a negative word about dad? Yeah, that's true. Well, did you feel like she felt positively about him? Oh, no. It was obvious. I mean, she didn't have to say a word. It was obvious by her demeanor, her body language, her facial expressions, her all of that. And so you don't have to say negative things for children to know that you feel negatively towards that other parent. Now, are you supposed to love them? No. I mean, I understand things happen when people separate and divorce, and I get that, but we have to shield it from the children, period.
I think that's true, and it's unfortunate when I would see people who would try to enmesh their children or recruit their children to their side of the dispute. It was really unfair to the children. The children don't have the tools to deal with that kind of thing, at least
No.
young children, and I think on up into the teenage years.
Right. And they are old enough to ask questions long before they're old enough to have the answers. And I get parents who say, "But the children ask me, so I assume they're old enough to know." No, they are not old enough to know. Just because they asked the question. I mean, I had my, I think, second or third grade son asked me what sex was. Well, that doesn't mean he's old enough to know, but he'll ask the question because he heard the word, you know. And so for parents to be that short sighted, and I don't know, George, if they really are that short sighted or if that's their excuse, if they're just using that as an excuse because they had an oops moment and they shared stuff they shouldn't have, and instead of just saying, I shared stuff that I shouldn't have, they will just make excuses. And it's okay to make mistakes. Don't make excuses because that just makes it that much worse. That shows me that they don't understand the mistake they made. And I'd much rather they say, I blew it. And I'll say, we all do. We all have. There's no divorced parent who hasn't blown it at one time or another, but we try not to. And the first step is to acknowledge that you shouldn't do that and that when you did it, it was wrong.
Well, and it's when I would see people, the two overriding emotions that I would see in people all the time were fear and anger.
Yeah,
And so uh, it's difficult, I guess, for them to not take out that anger or direct that anger toward the other parent. But they must not do so uh, if they want their children to be healthy toward both parents.
right, right. Because children, and I've said this many times on here, children derive their identity from both parents. And so when you put down the parent, you're putting down the child. And if you feel negatively about the parent, and especially when you get children that a lot of people say, you look just like your dad, you act just like your dad. And then mom is saying, and I'm not picking on moms today, it's equally as bad with dads, but mom is saying negative things or reacting negatively towards dad, that child is going to internalize that, and it will severely negatively affect their self-esteem and sense of self-being and self-worth.
Well, I would tell parents, your child or your children look at themselves and say, I'm part mom, I'm part dad. If
Mhm.
dad's bad, then I must be part bad. Or if mom's bad, I must be part bad. And so it really can, I guess, damage the self-esteem of the child.
Yes. Yeah, it does. I mean, their self-image often just plummets. And, if your mom says, your dad's a liar, and then the kid starts thinking they're a liar. Oh, I lied once. And mom says, dad's a liar, and I'm part of dad. And so, or dad's part of me. And so I'm just a liar. And they embrace that. Like they actually embrace that. And that's not what we want our kids to do.
Well, and I would imagine that children try to get away from conflict of their parents if they can. And when they get away, to whom or where do they get away to? We have to be concerned about that. Are they turning to friends and peers who are bad influences or good influences? And so, is that a chance that we really want to take with our children?
Right, right. Exactly. Because that is when kids often start making bad choices and get involved in things they shouldn't and hang out with kids that they shouldn't because they see themselves as one of those bad kids.
Yes,
And so, yeah.
and I think they seek some form of peacefulness from their peers.
Hmm. Hmm. They do. And when they identify with that kid that is not the best friend that they could make and not the best role model for them to have, that is who they're going to gravitate toward, though, if their self concept is that they themselves are that kind of person.
Well, I have an opportunity to watch two 30-something-year-old, uh, to me, young men.
Yes.
And one has a good relationship with both parents, and the other one does not.
Mhm.
And so it's interesting to see the contrast, where the one who has the relationship with both parents that's comfortable and I guess easy for him to maintain. The other one is at odds with his mom. And I'm not sure, I wasn't around for the divorce or the separation, but it's easy to see how the one adult child is comfortable with both of his parents and the other one is not, and it's a
Mhm.
shame. They're both similar in age, and one has a good relationship with both parents and the other one does not, and it's kind of it's quite a contrast, and it's a shame. It's unfortunate to see the one who has a bad relationship with his mom.
Yes. Yes. It's heartbreaking. And you can see it. I mean, it's so obvious. And they are like afraid to talk to that parent because either they've decided they don't like them or they know the other parent doesn't like them. So, what if they get mad at me because I'm talking to them and because I like them? And that's your parent. You should not only like them, you should love them. You know, here's another piece that I think is often overlooked. And I don't know if you're aware of studies about this, but I have seen several studies saying kids who have good relationships with both parents will have better relationships with their step parents. Because what parents think is if I can replace mom or I can replace dad with my new significant other, then we'll have the child as part of our family and our union and household and all of that. Well, that isn't typically what happens. They do better with step parents when they have a good relationship with both parents, because it allows them to love more than one adult. Like, you can have more than one adult in your life who loves you, and you should embrace that. You should love them back. And so when parents think, oh, I'll replace them with this person, and they expect the child to align with that person, that's typically not what happens. They will resent that person more because they'll think, if you weren't here, my mom and dad might get back together. Now, that's probably not going to happen, but they don't know that. As a child, they don't know that. They think, you're just in the way now of mom and dad ever getting back together. And so, in a lot of ways, they will resent that step parent, and it does not make them bond with them more if you can alienate the other parent. It just makes all the relationships more difficult.
Yeah, in my own personal experience, I mean, I had a step parent, and I did not like my step parent,
Mhm.
and still don't. And she's been gone a long time, but
Yeah.
it is difficult on the child, I think, from my own personal experience, when the step parent engages in alienating behaviors for
Mhm.
the natural parent. So again, my kudos go out to the artful step parent. There can be a real blessing in a child's life, or they can be the opposite of that.
Yes,
But
a
there's real
destructive force. Yes.
there's a real art to being a good step parent. I'm not sure exactly all the ingredients that go into it, but there really is a difference between the relationships of children who get along with their step parents and those who don't.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, you can see the difference. It's visible, it's noticeable. And typically, if one parent puts down not only the other parent, but their significant other, then they're not going to have a good relationship with your significant other either. Because now you've kind of labeled significant others as being bad, instead of, hey, you can't have enough adults in your life who love you. And if he or she treats you well, that's all I ask for. You love them all you want. Then they'll love them all. But again, parents are very short sighted that I can turn them against not only the other parent, but the step parent on that side, then they'll love us and be aligned to us. No, that's not what happens.
I think that's difficult for people to understand. They
Mhm,
think that if they vilify the step parent, the other step parent,
mhm,
the other in the other relationship, that they're somehow elevating their relationship with their own child.
mhm.
And I haven't seen that to be the case.
Nope, nope. That's because that's not the way it works. And you and I both know that. I mean, that's why we're trying to share our wisdom and experience. And that's why we call this Lessons from the Shark and the Shrink, because we've seen a few of these situations. And, I just want to reiterate, you haven't seen it because that's not the way it works. I haven't seen it either. And any of us who work with divorcing parents know that you just don't get the result you think you're going to get when you start alienating the parent, the step parent on the other side, all of that.
Well, I think a lot of times parents are unintentional because they're driven by that fear and
Yeah.
anger.
Yes. Yes. And this is a good place to stop because we need to take a quick break. But we'll talk about that when we come back because there are other emotions driving this, and they do have fears. And we'll talk about that when we come back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. I got caught not being ready to come back. Sorry about that. Anyway, we were talking before we went to break about the emotions driving parents' actions. And George, you nailed it. And that's why I love having you on here, because it's fear that is usually, and the anger. I mean, it's both. It's both. But a big part of it, I think the lasting emotion is fear, because they get over the anger, they move on, but they never stop fearing losing their child. Mm-hmm. And they do get over the loss of the spouse or significant other. But that fear of my child doesn't love me, they don't like me, they don't want to spend time with me, that never goes away. I think we all desire to have our children love us. And so that's that fear is the harder one to overcome. But again, parents are just terribly short-sighted when they think that the best way to align the child with you is to put down the other parent. And as promised, we'll get into what happens in some of those cases. But just let you comment again. I think you already did, but I'll let you say a few more words about the fact that you're not going to get the intended result if you're going about things in a bad way.
No, and really, when parents try to recruit their children, that does, you had mentioned parentifying, then the children become parentified. They become the emotional caretaker of the parent, and they're really not equipped to do that.
Right. No, they're not. They're not. They're children. We need to be caring for them. And it's sad because, well, let's just get into some of the things I've seen. So the most recent was a couple of girls. These happened to be girls. And they both said, and it was mom in this case who turned them against dad. They both said she robbed them of their childhood. And I think that's pretty profound. I mean, that statement right there, that kind of says it all. And it's what we're talking about here. They have to become parents to their parent. And take care of their emotions. And in doing so, we rob them of their own childhood. They can't be a kid. They can't have their own emotions about things because they are so worried about taking care of mom or dad.
How old were those girls?
These girls now are 14 and 16. And so they
And
aren't even all that old. They aren't adults yet, but they're old enough that they are feeling like mom robbed us of our childhood.
wow,
Because I
that's
think they were, yeah, they were 4 and 6 when the parents divorced. It had been 10 years. And they feel like this whole time they've been taking care of mom.
yeah, that's pretty unfortunate because where are they going to go when they're 17 and 18 in terms
Right.
of emotions, affiliations? Where do they turn at that age and when they're separating from their parents? And
Right.
it's kind of it's a difficult time. It's a dangerous time in terms of those relationships, taking care of them, nurturing those relationships. Because at 17 or 18, uh, they're old enough to have their own opinion about things, but they don't have typically the maturity to know just how to handle those situations.
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
Exactly.
they're not used to saying, "Mom, I want you to stop putting down Dad," or "Dad, I want you to stop putting down Mom." They usually don't feel secure enough to make that kind of a statement to their parent, but I know that
No.
they often wish they could.
Right. Right. They do, and once they get old enough to, they will, but they can't do it at the time it's happening, and that's why parents don't realize, again, they're going to grow up, they're going to be able to tell you what they think, and you may never see them again. So let me move on to the worst example. So that was the most recent, and like I said, I'm still working with those girls. 10 years later, the parents are relitigating. And it's like, as soon as they graduate, well, the oldest said, as soon as I graduate, I don't really want to see either parent again because mom had turned them against dad, but mom has now turned them against her, against herself. And so the oldest, I mean, she just flat out told me, when I graduate, I don't know that I want to see either one of them. And that's not the first time I've heard that. And I'm sure you've heard that before too.
Well, I don't get to work directly with the children like you do,
Right.
but I've heard parents express distress over the status of their relationship, and yet they are typically unaware of the role that they played in creating that difficulty.
Yes. Yes. Well, and not only are they unaware of the role that they played, but they don't think that they had anything to do with it. I mean, and they know better. In their heart of hearts, they have to know. But like I said, they will say, I never said a word. Well, that's usually not exactly true. But even in cases where that is true, they still did things in other ways. And they just have no awareness of that. They don't stop and think about body language, which is why we're talking about it. That's why we do this, because people need to think about body language and facial expression and all of that. If you think your children can't read you, and if you think all they're going to hear or see or perceive is what you say, you are sadly mistaken. There's plenty of evidence that, I don't know, it's like 70%, I don't know the exact percentage of our communication is not verbal, it's nonverbal. And so, parents are fooling themselves for sure. But let's move on to the worst case I've seen. And this is sad, but this is one that I really feel is important to share. And I shared this a lot. And it was a friend of my first husband's. And his mom kept him from his dad completely, just turned him against dad, wouldn't let him see dad, just interfered with the process. And when he became 18, became an adult and turned 18, the first thing he did was seek out his dad. He found him, He established a relationship with him. They went into business together in the glass business, glass in buildings, in cars, just glass in general. And he never spoke to his mother again. And that was blatant. I mean, that's extreme, but that's how profoundly it hurt him that his mother took his father from him. And so not only did they reestablish a relationship, but they went into business together, and he never spoke to mom again. Now, I want parents out there to really think about what I'm saying, because I am not kidding. And unfortunately, this man that I'm talking about is now deceased. He died a few years ago. But to my knowledge, he never did talk to his mom again. And so you want to think long and hard, because they are going to grow up. They are going to see what you did in adult terms. And it's hard to say. We can't predict how they're going to react towards you. It could be minor. It could be blatant like that, because that's pretty extreme. But he literally never spoke to mom again.
Well, I think if parents would realize that in taking the high road, they're really making an investment in their relationship with their children, it might be easier for them to take the high road. But I don't think that most parents realize that by taking the high road, they're investing in their future relationship with their child when their child becomes an adult and transitions from childhood to adulthood. They're really making an investment in that relationship. And I don't think they really realize that or see it that way. If they did, it might be easier for them to take the high road in their relationship, co-parent relationship with the other parent, because it is an investment in their relationship with their child.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. And getting back to the fear that drives all this, what I find is, and I have to kind of chuckle about it, because what I find is parents fear that the child's going to love the other parent more than them, that they're going to want to spend more time with the other parent than them. And the reason that makes me laugh is because that can happen in intact families too. You might all still be living under the same roof, but that doesn't mean your child likes you. That doesn't mean they spend time with you. That doesn't mean, and you know what I mean by likes you, but I see it happen. You can see these patterns going back to before the parents separated. I've got a couple of cases right now where there was no relationship between a child and a father. And I've actually got two right now, and both are girls. And they're both teenagers now and different ages, but they never had a relationship. And that's what I have to try to explain to the dad. And of course, the one dad in particular says, well, mom never let me have. Okay, well, once I got to talking to both him and the child about what their home life looked like, he was far too willing and happy to bury himself away in his man cave and play games on the computer and stuff like that, and thought everyone was happy, not realizing that in doing that, he failed to establish a relationship with his child. I will also contend, I'm going to take a little turn here now. I will also contend that if you develop a relationship with your child, there's no one who can touch that. And that's true really of anyone. When you develop a relationship, it's very hard for other people to interfere with that. People can only interfere with it when it's really not a healthy relationship, when you have manipulated them. Then it's very easy for, maybe not easy, but it's possible for someone else to come in and disrupt that relationship, because they can point out to the child what the parent did. Well, look how she doesn't respond well to you doing this, or he doesn't allow this with you and your mom, or whatever it may be. But, I'll just stop there and let you comment on any of that.
Well, I don't think parents stop and think that children from a fairly young age can decide that they are resentful of a step parent, an overbearing step parent, and they will carry that resentment and that anger with them for years. So you might have an 8 or 10-year-old child who at 16 or 17 is really fed up with their home relationships. And that's kind of sad. But I think that's what happens a lot of times if we have an overbearing step parent. I remember with great satisfaction a phone call I had with my stepmother, and I said, I have a mother and you're not it. And
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
anger can fester for years.
Yes. Yes. Because two things happen. I'm glad you pointed that out, because there's two components to this. One is they aren't old enough to perceive what's happening. And then the second piece is once they become old enough to perceive what's happening, they may not yet be ready, old enough, mature enough, or just ready to say or do anything about it. But the time will come when they're adults that they don't have to worry about what you think or say anymore, because you don't have any authority over them anymore. And so once they perceive it, and then once they develop enough internal strength to say something to you about it, but here's what parents don't get, is that often doesn't happen until adulthood. And now it's too late to course correct. You can't correct it now because they're adults. You don't have any authority over them. So you don't have any way to really correct the mistake you made. Maybe sit down with them and acknowledge it and apologize. But you also might be opening a can of worms. And so it's just imperative. I can't stress enough how imperative it is that parents take a look at themselves and recognize what it is we're saying here. Take a look. And yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, Dr. Marlene, I guess I have a question. How a child perceives what's going on with his or her parents.
Mhm.
They receive the information, but how do they process it?
Well, at some point, I mean, often, especially when they're younger, it's processed in the terms that other people attribute to it. Like they're going to buy into what mom is saying about your dad is just this or that. But as they get older, they are capable of thinking for themselves. And so they become, and it's usually around 10 or 11, that they become capable of thinking for themselves, developing their own opinions. And that carries then into that process takes place throughout the adolescent years. So 11 to 18, basically. They develop that more and more. Now, some kids at 12 have not only perceived it, but they're ready to say something about it. Others, they might not even perceive it until 14, and then they aren't ready to say anything until they're 18. It's just hard to say, and every situation is different. But I will say that kids often come to me and will say, can we talk to my mom about this? Or can we talk to my dad about that? I had it happen yesterday. A dad who hadn't seen his kid for a year, the kid was in the chair and the dad got down on his knees in front of the kid and was kind of in his face. And the kid is backing up and backing up. And then dad put one hand on one arm of the chair and one hand on the other. And the kid really, went backwards. And so Now I get the fun job of telling Dad he doesn't want, because as soon as Dad left, he said, that made me super uncomfortable. But in the moment, he wasn't going to say to his dad, get back, don't get that close to me. So now I get to tell Dad, and we get to talk about it next session. But there's an example of how that stuff plays out.
Well, and parents occupy a role of authority, I guess, to
Mhm.
their children typically. And so they need to wield that authority graciously and carefully.
Yes, yes. And we'll talk more on that when we come back, because again, that's a great place to stop. But it is time to take a break. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. You know, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, George, you were saying that parents have a certain amount of authority over their kids. And boy, that you're calling it. That's exactly what played out in my office yesterday. And this boy is 11, just turned. And I saw a perfect example of, he didn't know what to do other than scoot back as far as he could. But as soon as Dad left, said to me, that was super uncomfortable. I don't want him to do that again. Can you make him not do that? Well, the best thing I can teach that child long term is how to say that for himself. But for somebody who just turned 11, he's not going to be able to say that for himself. But he certainly felt it. I saw it. I mean, it was so obvious. But what amazes me, George, and maybe I'll let you speak to this since you don't work with the kids, but you do work with the parents. There are parents who don't see their own behavior. Like, I'm sure when I point out to Dad what he did, he'll go, oh, okay. But he sure didn't perceive it in the moment. And I don't know what makes parents not be aware of their own actions, but I bet he's not thinking about how he made his child feel.
No, and I wonder when in the process of divorce, parents would be most receptive to understanding what taking the high road does to benefit their children, as opposed to being caught up in their own anger and saying, I can't work with him or her. That's why we're getting a divorce and so forth. But when is a parent receptive to understanding how the high road benefits their child?
Well, and that's what's hard to say because, as you and I both know, different parents can get there faster than others. And to that point, I was in a status conference last week, and the judge made a comment about these two parents. He said, I never thought you would get here, because it's been a couple of years since the initial divorce, and they are, looking at some issues again. Um, and so we're, back to being in court and having an occasional status conference just to work these things out. But he made that comment. I didn't think you two would ever get here. And so I think it's different for every couple. And the circumstances of their divorce come into play, their personal sense of self and um, confidence in their own abilities to live life independently now, and things like that come into play. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that come into play. But that fear that you often talk about extends to things like money. I mean, it's not just, are the kids going to want to spend time with me? And how am I going to handle not having them half of the time or however much time it is? But they know money's going to be tight, money's going to be an issue. And they worry about that and fear that financially they aren't going to make it. So I think there's a lot of things going on. But I think the first thing that comes into play is circumstances surrounding the divorce, because I think there's really something to be said for divorces that don't involve cheating and things like that. There are parents who get out of the relationship first, but it's human nature to want to find someone else before you let go of the person that you have, even if it's a bad relationship. At least you have someone. I mean, that's the way a lot of people think. It's not healthy, but it's the way a lot of people think. So I think we first have to look at what prompted the divorce, what caused the divorce.
Yeah, I think the anger level in cases of infidelity, for example, is higher
Hmm.
than people who just grew apart and said we want to
Yeah.
go our separate ways and live our separate lives. Uh, in cases of infidelity, the anger is palpable, I think, for the aggrieved parent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And they'll tell you they hate the other parent. And I'll say, well, at one point you loved them, you know. Well, I thought I did, but he's really a scoundrel, or whatever they say. It's usually not that nice what they say about that. But yeah, yeah. And I mean, the only thing I can say, and you and I've talked about this on here before, is seek some professional help. That doesn't mean that you've got mental problems, because people, they get worked up when you say that and they get defensive and they don't want to hear it. But just people that can help work through this with you and can also tell you how things typically go. I think that unknown of what's going to happen through the divorce and then beyond. But I mean, think how many people have walked into your office, George, and they know nothing about, they've never been in a courtroom, and they know nothing about how this is going to go. It's scary.
It is, and it's often very scary and very unpleasant for people who are going to court. So,
And well, to that point, I would love for you to share what you do with clients before you're going to go to hearing to get them prepared. If you don't mind sharing that, I think this is awesome.
well, I have to explain to them that they're not to display disgust uh, for the other parent or take that position, call them names and testimony and things like that. I often, if somebody is very afraid and I perceive that of the courtroom, I'll take them over to the courthouse and take
Yes.
them into a courtroom and let them get a little desensitized to the process. Maybe even let them watch a little bit of a hearing And I've found that to be immeasurably helpful with some people.
Yes, and that's exactly what I was talking about. I love that you do that, because I've had parents tell me when we walked into court for our final orders hearing, that's the first time I've been in a courtroom in my life. And I was like, wow, like they didn't even know where to sit. They didn't. And so taking them over and just showing them the courtroom, and we will sit here, the other party and their attorney will sit here. And when you testify, you'll go up there, and just explaining it, I think really goes a long way. And to take that one step further back, when you first separate, seek someone out who can just tell you what this is going to look like in the weeks and months to come. Because there are people out there who we do this all the time, and we can tell you what it's going to look like, and how things are likely to progress and proceed. And then, they say knowledge is power. And I believe that. Then you know what to expect.
Well, I think for the attorney, the process of trying to educate his or her client to the high road and the dividends that will pay back over the years needs to start early, almost from the initial consultation.
Yes, yes, it does. And so whether it's the attorney, and some attorneys are better at this than others. You're great at it, and I know that because I've worked with you. But, you have to know what to tell your parents, and you have to know what their concerns are. And I also appreciate and respect the attorneys that send them to someone like me, who say, just go talk to her.
Well, because I stand by my statement that parents don't litigate their way to a healthy co-parenting
No,
relationship.
no, that's right. And most attorneys, that's what they're there for. And so working out an agreement is not first and foremost on their mind.
No, we're really first and foremost combatants.
Yes, yes. And I would never say that, but I'll agree when you say it. Okay, we're coming up on the end of another hour. But thank you, George, for being here and for your insight and wisdom. We appreciate you.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Dr. Marlene, and I learn a lot.
Oh, thank you. We learn a lot. Well, that's it for this week. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you've been watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll see you next week.
Tune in to The High Road with host Dr. Marlene and gain insight into how to rise above tough circumstances and learn the skills that will help you take the high road in your life, no matter what challenges might come your way, on the next episode of The High Road.